Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Clerks just let me know that we've begun our live stream, and I'm going to call this committee meeting to order. Thank you all for attending. I'm going to be performing the duties of chair for this one meeting, as Mayor West has sent regrets, and also Cheryl Guinness has sent regrets as well. So with that, I'll just be looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Somebody willing to move that? Anyone? Don't be shy. Okay, thank you, Ms. McNacky. Any discussion around the agenda? All in favor? Okay, any opposed? Okay, that carries. Okay, so for clarity, I think I should say we've got four members of the committee present, five including myself, and then we have Councillors Silovitz, Davidson, and Thompson and Liu that are sitting in, and sorry, Councillor Shu also. So we have five members of council sitting in on this committee, as it is very, very critical and important. But we're going to need motions to come from the four committee members that are present. So our next scheduled item is a disclosures of pecuniary interest. Does any members of the committee have a disclosure to make at this time? I see none. Okay. And I'll need a motion to adopt the previous minutes. 4.9 from April 15th. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Any discussion? All in favor? Got to get committee members to vote if you're in favor. Okay, any opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you. Okay, now the adoption of previous minutes. We have no delegation, so we move right to our scheduled business. And item 6.1 is going to be a presentation from Sabrina Gregain, Manager of Affordable Housing Development, and Gabriel Wong, Director of Housing Development and Asset Strategy from the Regional Municipality of York. So this is a presentation up to 15 minutes. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Gregain or Ms. Wong. Oh, Mr. Wong, sorry, go ahead.
No problem. Hi, good afternoon, committee members. Thank you very much for the opportunity for us to present our site selection framework on behalf of the Regional Municipality of York. As the chair introduced, my name is Gabriel Wong. I'm the Director of Housing Development and Asset Strategy. Today with me, we have Sabrina Gregain, the Manager of Affordable Housing Development. Today, we are going to go through what we have presented to Council in June, the site selection framework, and we'll walk you through our methodology and happy to take any question in the end. Next slide, please. So the purpose of today's presentation is to provide this committee with an overview of the site selection framework recently endorsed by Regional Council. Our aim for this framework is to ensure that we have an objective and transparent process to finding sites for emergency, transitional, and community housing, and leverage this framework to assess multiple sites across York Region, concurrently in deep partnership with all our local municipalities, including Richmond Hill. Our presentation will reveal ongoing need for emergency, transitional, and community housing in York Region. We'll show you the region's highest and best use study that fit into this process. And then we'll go through the site selection framework that was approved by Council. And lastly, we'll review the recommendation and next step, including a critical component of engagement and confirmation with our local municipal partners, again, like yourself. With that, I'll turn it over to Sabrina to go over some background information.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gabriel. Next slide, please. So before getting into the details of the framework, I would like to contextualize the current housing situation in York Region by highlighting the demand for emergency, transitional, and community housing and available supply. Next slide, please. So York Region is experiencing a housing crisis with a growing demand for affordable emergency and transitional housing. In 2024, the number of households in the subsidized housing waitlist grew to over 18,000 households, with about 4,500 new applicants added. These are individuals in need of deeply affordable housing that the private market simply cannot provide. York Region's emergency housing beds are regularly or at near capacity because of increased demand and length of stay. Homelessness increased significantly between 2023 and 2024, with 2,525 people experiencing homelessness in 2024. There were 986 people known to have experienced chronic homelessness and access homeless services in 2024. That's a 108% increase from 2023. The number of known encampment locations increased from 62 to 361 between the years of 2021 and 2024. As people stay longer in emergency housing, less capacity is available for others to get help. Now, while investments from the region and senior governments has increased and helped provide additional services for residents, more must be done to address the growing needs. Next slide, please. Depicted on the screen is a housing continuum. Investments across the entire housing system in emergency, transitional, community, and affordable housing are needed to fully address the housing needs and challenges. The framework before you today focuses on the important work to find sites for emergency and transitional and community housing, which is the area of the housing continuum that the region plays a crucial role in managing as service manager under the Housing Services Act. Next slide, please. So shown on the screen are the region's existing emergency and transitional housing facilities. As you can see, there are 7 regionally owned facilities shown here in pink and 2 provider-owned facilities shown in blue. You will notice on the map that emergency and transitional housing facilities are generally located in the center of the region along the Yonge Street corridor, extending up to the town of Georgina in the Sutton area, and one located in the south of the region in Richmond Hill. While there are temporary facilities like seasonal shelters elsewhere in the region, the focus of this work is to build new permanent facilities like Belinda's Place, Porter Place, and Richmond Hill Hub. In a moment, you will hear about the shading on the base map and what it means and how we're using it within our framework. Next slide, please. On this map, we have layered all the existing community housing facilities. The 38 Housing York Inc. buildings are depicted in deep pink, and the 56 nonprofit provider buildings are depicted in peach color. While the priority is to find sites for emergency and transitional housing right now, the framework will also be used to assess sites for future HYI development. Next slide, please. Our priority right now is to find 3 new sites for emergency and transitional housing. 1 new site is required to replace Porter Place from its current location in East Gwillimbury. Now, with the demand for such facilities outgrowing the delivery, there may be a need to keep all existing assets in operation while we increase the supply. Now, to help with increasing the supply, we also have 2 new additional sites to develop for emergency and transitional housing, and we refer to these as our growth sites. These projects are included in our 2025 capital budget, including funding to purchase land for 2 new facilities. Next slide, please. So I will now talk about the highest and best use study. Next slide, please. The region undertook a highest and best use study to determine the best use for regionally owned lands, including sites that are best suited for housing. The highest and best use yielded sites that are being put through the site selection framework to identify their housing development potential. Leveraging regional land is an important component of our strategy to build new emergency, transitional, and community housing. However, it is not our only strategy. Next slide, please. The framework, as approved, is being used to evaluate 4 buckets of land holdings: regional lands, Housing York Inc. lands, municipal lands, and private sale lands. For regional lands, we will evaluate all 14 regional sites identified via the highest and best use study. We are also examining Housing York Inc. properties that have excess lands. We're working on updating our Housing York Inc. portfolio management plan this year, which will also feed into this process. For municipal lands, we would like to continue working with each local municipality to determine if there are municipally owned lands that may be available for donation or partnership that align with our framework. As noted, we have funding for land purchase, and we will continue to work with our partners to identify opportunities to use this framework to objectively evaluate the opportunities to purchase land that aligns with our needs. The evaluation of all land opportunities is happening in partnership with our local municipalities. With that context, I'm going to pass it over to Gabriel to walk you through our newly approved framework.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. So as Sabrina mentioned, we are going to talk about the approved site selection framework. And this framework has a three-step process, and I'm going to go through the three-step one by one with you. Next slide, please. First, we start off with a map. The map that you are seeing on the left is what we call the priority areas for housing investment map. It is available it is available here, and then it's also attached to our council report. The green area that's shown on this map is the priority area for housing investment. I'm going to explain the variations of green later. For now, just consider all the green as one green color. When we talk about the green area on this map, we are talking about the land use perspective. We are referring to a specific part of the region that plays a key role in accommodating residents and supporting services that they may need. Specifically, the green area includes York Region cities, towns, villages that make up of the settlement areas. But it is important to note that it excludes hamlets, designated employment areas, and agriculture and rural lands, that they are not suitable for residential use. In other words, the green areas are designated broadly for residential use in your local official plan, and is generally where we can expect to see most housing, as well as all the services like retail, institutional, cultural, and recreational facilities. Generally, this area have the infrastructure to support resident users and amenities, and all the residents need regardless of their income or life circumstances. Now let's talk about the variation of green on this map. The shade of green depicts the concentration of core housing needs. Core housing needs is measured and defined as households spending more than 30% of their income on housing, or who are living in unsuitable or inadequate housing. For example, a family of 4 living in a one-bedroom apartment, and they cannot find alternative in the same community. The darker the green, the higher the core housing need. We use the core housing need as one of the suitable data, or because it's stable, supported by census, and geographically distribution of needs is highly indicated in using this methodology. So our step one is quite simple. When we have a site, we will look at whether the site is located on the map in any of the green area. If it's included in the green area, you will proceed to step 2. If it's outside of the green area, we will not proceed at this time. It is important to note that the map color area will change. As the city like yourself, the city of Richmond Hill, as you change your official plan or secondary plan, so as the green will change. So step 2 is, next slide, please. Step 2 is what we call the prerequisite criteria. The prerequisite criteria is quite simple. We set off 3 criteria so that we were not going to pick up lands that might not be suitable for development. So the first prerequisite criteria is minimum 1 developable acre in size. We want to make sure the land size is suitable for housing development and increase to create the density that is required for a successful project. The second one is no significant title issue. This is required to ensure that we will not acquire lands that have significant legal issues to sort out. And lastly, the site is conforming to land use policy or are likely to receive approval through an application process. This is to ensure that we do not acquire lands that require excessive resource to overcome planning issues. Next slide, please. After the site has passed through the first two steps, the proposed site will go through locational analysis. As shown on the screen, there are 10 locational analysis criteria. Instead of going through each of these criteria as I'm mindful of time, I will just group them into 3 different aspects. The first aspect is the site characteristic, which include how aligned the site is with core housing need, as we mentioned about the green map, current land ownership, and infrastructure and service feasibility. These are covered under criteria 1 to 3. The second aspect is the planning and land use compatibility, which include conformity with planning of surrounding properties. And the last is access to various amenities, which is covered in criteria 6 to 10. Well, note that these criteria are mutually exclusive, but collectively exhaustive, which means they don't overlap each other, but collectively, they cover all the important aspects for project success. One thing to note is each criteria have different weighting, as the weighting assigned to each criteria is to demonstrate relative importance. For example, access to public transit is weighted heavier than access to open space. Not saying open space is not important, but access to public transit, will enable the residents to access other amenities. Next slide, please. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through this slide in details. This is just a flow chart demonstrating how the 3-step process work. As you can see, the step 1 and the step 2 and step 3, if the site pass through all 3 steps, you go to the lower left corner, which we call the front runner site. And those are the sites that we work closely with local municipal partner to ensure that we have alignment in these project locations and is in general alignment with the local municipality plan overall. And for all the sites that might not meet this criteria at this time, we are putting it on the right-hand side, which we call as potential for future consideration. Why do we call it that way? It's because there's a dotted line on the right-hand side. The situation might change when towns and cities continue to develop, so as the criteria, well, not the criteria, so as the map, and also access to amenities. So if the situation does change, there's a dotted line on the right-hand side that can bring the sites that are slated for future consideration back up to step 1 to go through the process one more time. I know I'm at time, but I'll just go through next step very quickly. Next slide, please. So next steps. Next slide, please. Now that the framework is approved by the council, we have looked at all 4 categories of land: the regional lands, the HYI lands, municipal land, and also private sale. And right now, we are currently working with all the local planning needs to make sure that our selected site align with the local municipality planning. And as next step, we'll be meeting with each of the mayors to go through our front-runner sites to get some alignment with them. And in Q4 of this year, we are going to bring back the results to regional council. And the goal is to advance both community, emergency, and transitional housing and provide much needed housing for the residents in York region, including Richmond Hill, obviously. So that's conclude our presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that presentation. Okay, I'm gonna open it up to committee members for questions, and I'll ask that a motion to receive the presentation also be forwarded at this time. Anyone want to kick us off?
Also move the motion to accept. I'll move the motion to accept the report.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. McNackey. Go ahead. Oh, Mr. Clare, did you have questions as well?
I do have a question, but I don't think this is the place for it. But I would love to have a conversation with Gabriel. I think I have a site that I'd like to talk to them about.
Yeah, happy to. You have my contact in the last slide, so feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to work with any community members and committee members to talk about any potential.
Thank you.
Very, very good. Thank you. Okay, Ms. McNackey, go ahead. You have a question?
Yes, I do actually, Mr. Chair. I have 3 questions. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, my first question is, you're talking about trend. Well, first of all, thank you very much for a very thorough presentation. My first question is, you're talking about transitional housing and emergency housing. Is this accompanied with support services? Have you factored that in?
Yes, absolutely. So, for the chair, our emergency and transitional housing is more than housing. We provide wraparound service in all our facilities. We currently have existing facilities. So we work with community provider like Salvation Army. We work with Blue Doors and other organizations that provide social worker support, employment support, food security support. So there's a lot of wraparound service to support people who are experiencing homelessness and using our system right now.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, we talk about an urgency and we're getting more, it's more and more, we're talking about more and more homeless people. And I observed the Housing and Homelessness Committee meeting last time around on September the 11th. And it was mentioned by one of the mayors about tiny homes. And I'm really wondering, I know in Kelowna they have tiny homes and it's apparently working out quite well, Kelowna, BC. Is there a chance that, we're in such dire need, there's so many homeless people, and it's so urgent, why can't we look at the concept of tiny homes? That's my second question. And my third question is, in York Region, we've had the big pipe project that has allowed some land to be left vacant that were the former locations of the pumping stations. Actually, there's one on Farmstead and Indigo that is actually two lots, and I know of a couple of others. Have they been considered for housing with York Region, these lands?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I'll answer the second and the third question. Maybe the third question I'll defer to Sabrina also to talk about our site selection effort right now. So yes, absolutely. Thanks for tuning into the Housing and Homelessness Committee meeting, and tiny homes and temporary structure and different type of housing was discussed, and they're under considerations. And just like any housing type, they come with certain benefits and they also come with certain risks. So we are evaluating the pros and cons, and staff are working to provide a study to talk about what the tiny homes can provide and the benefits of them, and also what might be the drawbacks and what might be the situation is. So one of the things that we are struggling with sometimes is the land cost, and a lot of our development has the density, higher density, because the land in the region is expensive. So sometimes we need to think about higher density development. Other locations in Canada might find success in other build form. So we study them, we learn from them. But one thing I would answer though is some solution in certain geographical area might not be translatable in York Region per se, but we are constantly looking at different methods. And in terms of your third question, through the chair, the lands, we look at all the lands that we have access to, but I'll let Sabrina talk about our current effort, and we have go through more than 60 different locations right now. So at this time, but I will let Sabrina elaborate on that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Gabriel, and thank you so much for the question. Just to clarify, I think you were inquiring about regionally owned lands there. So I can just speak to a little bit of the process. The regional study, the highest and best use, looked at all regional lands. So yes, all lands that the region owns have been evaluated via that study. However, as you know, there are many services that the region does provide, housing being one of them. So there may have been sites that were identified as the highest and best use for other purposes, in which case it didn't necessarily get passed along to us for evaluation. There was one site via the highest and best use study that that was located in Richmond Hill that was passed on for further consideration through that site selection framework. And we are currently evaluating those sites and are working with the planning leads through each local municipality to essentially confirm our site assessment results and then brief that up to each of the mayors in the municipality. But as Gabriel mentioned, we are constantly looking at any opportunities in all of the 4 buckets of land. The regional lands is one of the 4, so we're hopeful that we may find some opportunity either in the private sale or partnership with Richmond Hill. So if anybody knows of any opportunities, as Gabriel said, please reach out, and we're happy to evaluate any site that comes our way using the site selection framework.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other committee members have questions? Okay. I have a couple questions, and I'll open it up to members of council as well. Whether you're on the committee or not, now is an opportunity if you want to ask questions. Anyone else? Okay. So I wonder who's here from our staff. Commissioner Galanis, Director Flores. If someone could, I'm just curious if the city of Richmond Hill has gone through a similar study of our potential sites that are on city-owned lands. Sorry, Mr. Wong and Ms. Gregan, just Director Flores.
Hi, through you, Mr. Chair. We have done an exercise to look at our surplus publicly owned lands. Unfortunately, after scoping through our criteria, we only came across 2 potential sites that we had been in conversation with York Housing. Only one of them was deemed to be plausible to move forward with and explore, but because of other technical issues, I can't remember exactly what we have shared publicly before, but it's not something that we
Didn't
are
make the cut.
because it did include another facility. And I think Ashley will be speaking to some of that in the next presentation. But at this point, we don't have any land that meets the criteria that was outlined by the region in this presentation, but we're certainly open to taking a look at our inventory in the future and working with York Housing if something does come up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And I think the next presentation is going to address some of my other questions. So getting back to the presentation in front of us, when it comes to the highest and best use study, it looks like that you've identified only 2 locations in Richmond Hill that are potentials. Well, it's a 2-part question. First question is there any sites that could be a front runner site from Richmond Hill? I guess one of those 2. And what are those 2 sites? I think there's some lands for a jog elimination at Stouffville and Leslie. I'm not sure what's at Yonge and 19th. Could you elaborate?
Sure, happy to answer that question. So in regards to the sites that were passed on via the highest and best use, there is 1 site within Richmond Hill that has been passed on to us for further evaluation, and that is the northwest corner of Bayview and 19th Avenue. It's 2.5
Bayview
acres.
19th.
Northwest corner of Bayview and 19th Avenue, that's correct.
It's been evaluated. Now you've got a green circle at Leslie and Stouffville. Is that probably something for the future?
So again, the region owns many lands within the region and Richmond Hill included, but those have been, a select few have been passed on for further evaluation as identified as being the highest and best use for housing. So that is the first step. And then we take all of those sites and put it through our site selection framework to determine whether or not that site that was identified in Richmond Hill via the highest and best use study has high development potential, as Gabriel ran through in the framework.
Okay. Yeah, just having said earlier that transit is important. I mean, Leslie and Stouffville would meet it, but Bayview and 19th would not be well serviced by transit. Thank you for that. Thank you for the outlining the state's site selection process to us, and I guess we'll have to wait a month or so to see if you reach out to our mayor for a potential front-runner site. So, Councillor Davidson, you had a question? Can't unmute. I know what it's like. I've had the same problem a couple of times. Remote that I wasn't able to unmute myself. I don't know. The clerk's got a number to call in, probably, or maybe. That I won't forget about you, Councillor Davidson. We can come back if you get yourself unmuted. Just burst in at any time. Anyone else have questions? Okay, I don't see any others. So thank you very much for that presentation. Thank you for coming. It's great for us to understand what the region is doing. You know, it's a regional concern, but it's become a priority for everyone. The housing crisis that we're in. As you see, the number of councillors we have in attendance here, everyone is very concerned about this issue, and we want to follow closely and understand what the region's going to do to help solve this problem. And your presentation was really helpful toward that end. So thank you very much. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. All in favor of receiving the presentation? Okay. You see two. Okay. Any opposed to that? Okay, so that carries. Okay, we'll move on to item 6.2. Now this is a presentation by Ashley Dickinson, our project manager for affordable housing. Ms. Dickinson. So you're on mute, Ms. Dickinson.
Forgive me. I thought someone else was going to control that. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me today for an update on our affordable housing initiatives here in the city of Richmond Hill. Next slide, please. Through my presentation today, I will provide you with an update on the city's CIP for affordable housing. And
Ms. Dickinson, if you accept my apology, I think Councillor Davidson has now got her audio working. So we're going to go back and allow her to ask her question, and I'll bring you back on.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Ms. Davidson.
Okay, my apologies. It actually said that the host has to unmute me, just so you know. So I ran over here to my other computer. I do have a question if the folks, oh, you're still here. One of them is, if a city puts up a fuss about a shelter, for example, I see Aurora is not as dark green as Richmond Hill, and we all know what happened with the men's shelter. Why was it planned there in the first place? Or does the necessity in the neighborhood also factor in the resistance from the community? Do you know what I mean? Why was that area selected, say, other than another one in terms of what happened in Aurora?
Yeah, thank you so much for your question, Councillor Davidson. And then for you, Chair, there are two reasons. Number one is 2016, we have a different framework. The site selection framework that we presented today is a revised framework. So in 2016, there's a previous framework, and there are many success stories about using this framework, including our recent opening of another community housing in Richmond, the Mosaic House, 97 units for community housing. So that framework do provide a lot of success, and just like any incremental approach, there are some improvement. So the previous framework is largely qualitative. So what we moved from the previous framework to now is move from the qualitative framework to more of a quantitative framework. In the quantitative framework is we evaluate 10 different criteria. And core housing needs, as you notice, there are darker green and lighter green in the map. So certain municipality might be a lighter green, and our score will base on that. In that one criteria, if you are darker green, you score higher. If you're lighter green, you score less in that one criteria. But there are other 9 criteria that we look at, and that's why the green map that you see on one of the slide is not the only determined factor. And we continue to look at all 9 municipalities for any potential.
Thank you. And the other question I've always had is, I agree that the Yonge Corridor would be the best place for all this because it's accessible, but it's also probably the most expensive real estate in the GTA. Would it not make more sense to have housing built faster in places that aren't so intense, and then offer some kind of shuttle service, some kind of transportation to and from, rather than trying to move the whole thing on the Yonge Corridor, work something out with York Region Transit to help people get to jobs or be dropped off somewhere in the city square during the day. I just think there's other places that maybe we could get this moving faster if it wasn't on the Yonge Corridor with access to transit.
Yeah, again for you, Chair, a quick question. So we are not only looking at just the Yangtze Corridor or Highway 7 corridor. Now, although we do have had significant investment in rapid transit in those 2 areas, and the region wants to make use of our previous investment. So when we build rapid transit, we also want to make sure that other developments or other services can get access through those more convenient transit corridor. But we are not exclusively only looking at those corridors. Once again, when we look at the 10 criteria, one of the criteria is access to transit. If it's access to rapid transit or very close to a stop, you get higher points. If you're slightly further, we are not excluding those. The score might be slightly lower. And to your point about having some shuttle service that can be provided, we absolutely have done that and can continue to do that. The region also has our YLT has I forgot the name, is on demand service that you can call and get a transit from a more remote location to bring you to a more of a transit corridor location. And their service is available, and we will continue to explore those options.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davidson. Okay, so back to Ms. Dickinson. Ashley, thanks for your patience. Go ahead.
Of course. Thank you so much. So through the presentation today, I'm going to provide you with an update on the city CIP for affordable housing and sustainable design, and an update on Richmond Hill's surplus and underutilized lands for affordable housing initiative. Next slide, please. First, I will provide a very brief update to the work on the city's recently approved CIP for affordable housing and sustainable design. Next slide, please. As a quick reminder, the city's CIP established 4 incentive streams available to sustainably built affordable rental housing projects that commit to providing affordable units for a minimum of 25 years. These incentives were designed to be stackable with other affordable housing incentive programs, which the background study for our CIP identified was necessary to make projects viable, particularly given current market conditions. The city is implementing the CIP through a phased approach, with the first CIP application intake window accepting submissions for 2 of the 4 incentive streams as indicated on this slide. The Per Affordable Unit Grant provides up to $150,000 for each affordable unit, designed to offset fees and charges associated with residential development. The Tax Increment Equivalent Grant, or TIG, will offset the city portion of property tax increases associated with new or redevelopment of a property, proportionate to the amount of affordable units in a project. Applicants were able to apply for one or both of these incentives. Next slide, please. As you're aware, in January of this year, we launched our first CIP application intake. We're pleased to report that the city received several high-quality applications for CIP funding. The total funding requested through the Per Affordable Unit Grant stream significantly exceeds funds that are available for this intake, which means that not all eligible projects are likely to receive funding. City staff are working through an evaluation process to score and prioritize the applications in preparation for a staff report by the end of the year to Richmond Hill Council that will make recommendations with respect to the award of CIP funds. Next slide, please. Next, I will provide you with an update on the city's surplus and underutilized lands for affordable housing initiative. Next slide, please. The scope of work for this project was originally initiated through action item 6.1 of our affordable housing strategy, which recommends that the city identify surplus or underutilized city-owned lands or buildings for the purpose of developing affordable housing. Complementing this action, about 3 years ago, York Region also embarked on a municipal land supply program, which aimed to work with lower-tier municipalities to identify municipally owned lands suitable for development by Housing York Inc., the region's nonprofit housing agency. These combined directives formed the original basis for the city to partner with York Region to identify potential city-owned lands that might accommodate an affordable housing development. In late 2023, the scope of work for this project was expanded as part of the city's commitment to the federal government through the Housing Accelerator Fund, or HAF. Next slide, please. The initiative scope, as committed to through HAF, includes the review and update of city policies to enable the location of affordable housing on city-owned sites, the development of a framework to guide projects if and when city-owned lands are identified as potentially suitable for affordable housing, establishing an inventory of surplus and underutilized city-owned lands potentially available for affordable housing, and finally, to identify a pilot project site to work to leverage our city-owned property to facilitate affordable housing. Next slide, please. Staff reviewed various policies to ensure there are no barriers to making city-owned lands available for the purpose of affordable housing, if and when those lands become available. Policies reviewed include the city's sale and other disposition of land policy and our strategic asset management policy. Asset management is a structured approach the city uses to plan for, operate, maintain, and eventually replace its infrastructure, including buildings, roads, parks, and other public assets. By focusing on the full life cycle of each asset, the city can ensure that investments are timely, service levels are maintained, and decisions are based on evidence and value for money. Earlier this year, Richmond Hill Council approved the 2025 Asset Management Plan. This plan acknowledges that as the city continues to mature the processes and tools that manage our buildings and properties, there may be future opportunities to explore adding affordable housing on city-owned land. These opportunities could come up when the city reviews how much investment facilities need and whether the services are changing. For example, if a facility is being redeveloped, the city might consider whether affordable housing could be incorporated onto that site. Next slide, please. In addition to the policy review, staff have also developed a draft process framework to guide future projects when city-owned lands are identified as potentially suitable for affordable housing. This process remains evergreen as we continue to learn through experience what this involves. We are also keen to continue our work alongside York Region, who, as you've just heard, is undertaking a similar scope of work at the regional scale. Key process steps within this framework are set out on this slide. Generally, this work involves identifying a site and confirming its viability and potential to render affordable housing, including analysis of as-of-right planning permissions and consideration of development concepts. Undertaking the pre-development work necessary to ensure a site is development ready, which may include official plan and/or zoning bylaw amendments and various environmental and technical site assessment studies. It involves issuing a competitive call for applications for nonprofit partners to build and operate on the site, which was established as a public lands incentive stream through our CIP. And finally, selecting a project partner and arriving at the program outcome to leverage city-owned land to facilitate affordable housing. Next slide, please. In late 2023, This committee received an update on the approach and preliminary findings of the land inventory exercise. Staff took a two-prong approach to identify city-owned lands, which generated two sets of inventory: vacant lands and underutilized lands. The criteria we used to identify potential sites are listed on this slide. Firstly, the lands must be owned by the city and located outside of floodplain and the greenway system. The land must be within the neighborhood or centers and corridors land use designation, excluding those lands identified for parks and open space. In addition, the lands must be located at least 30 meters away from a railway and be greater than 2,000 square meters, which amounts to about a half acre and provides for at minimum a small townhouse development. Finally, the lands should have existing servicing in terms of water and sewage and be accessible by a street. Next slide, please. Importantly, the findings of the inventory analysis are reflective that Richmond Hill does not own or acquire lands without a specific purpose. Accordingly, a very limited list of sites was identified through the inventory criteria screening process. As noted on this slide, the initial inventory review, completed as a desktop exercise based on a database of city-owned parcels, identified 8 potential sites. These sites met preliminary criteria for further review by a staff technical advisory committee. Detailed review of the 8 sites that met preliminary criteria resulted in the prioritization of 2 potentially viable sites to focus on that might accommodate an affordable housing development in the near term. The 2 priority sites were brought forward to York Region Housing Development staff, and concept plans for housing developments on these 2 sites were developed for further consideration by both York Region and Richmond Hill staff. These concepts were reviewed by the city's technical advisory committee for further consideration and insight, with the objective of prioritizing a single pilot project site to continue to focus on. Staff identified a priority pilot project site for more detailed analysis, which was agreed upon by York Region Housing Development staff on the basis of both the location of the site and the potential residential project size set out by the concepts. Next slide, please. Our preferred pilot site for affordable housing is 191 Major Mackenzie Drive West, near to Yonge and Major Mackenzie, where Fire Station 81 is currently located. This fire station was considered as a potential candidate for redevelopment on the basis that there are maintenance challenges as well as operational and functional issues associated with this aging facility. Largely, this decision was made because this site had the potential to yield a much higher number of units and in consideration of the location and surrounding neighborhood, as this site is located on a major road adjacent to our village core, thus better connected to services and amenities. York Region Housing Development staff also agreed with this priority pilot site selection, as the concept plans found that only 191 Major Mackenzie Drive West met York Region's minimum project size for a viable, affordable housing development. Next slide, please. To understand the feasibility of co-locating housing with a redeveloped fire station at this site, Planning and Fire Services collaborated on phase 1 of a fire station optimization study over the last several months. This study recently determined that the co-location of housing with the fire station at this location is not feasible. Barriers to this location include the need to allow for clear access and separation of fire and residential vehicles, and the report also noted that the co-location is cost prohibitive, as the apartment would need to be built to a higher structural engineering standard to meet post-disaster construction standards for fire service facilities, as prescribed by the National Fire Protection Association. As the remainder of the fire station optimization study work progresses over the longer term, we will continue to discuss potential opportunities related to affordable housing should they arise. However, these findings confirmed that this preferred pilot site is not viable in the short term to meet our half action plan timeline. Next slide, please. As a result of the fire station co-location findings, we pivoted to the second priority site, which is the former Lake Wilcox Community Center, located at 81 Wildwood Avenue. This site is on a local road in Oak Ridges, directly across from a school. These lands have been deemed surplus by council, and council previously approved selling the property upon completion of the zoning bylaw update. Site viability analysis determined that to make this property available for a nonprofit housing building and operator would require considerable resources, budget, and time. This neighborhood is comprised entirely of single-family and semi-detached homes. Official plan and zoning bylaw amendments would be required to allow for townhouses or low-rise multi-residential development, with potentially significant impacts to the neighborhood fabric and adjacent school. In addition to planning amendments required to allow for increased density, activities to ready this site for a nonprofit organization to build and operate include demolishing the existing building and completing pre-development studies. Completing these activities would take several years to complete, thus this approach did not meet our half agreement timelines. Next slide, please. Given the limitations of this property that I just outlined, and in consideration of commitments made through the half agreement, staff identified an opportunity that best leverages existing city resources and meets half action plan timelines and objectives. This option involves selling the land on the private market as originally directed by council and directing the proceeds of the sale to a future CIP for affordable housing and sustainable design funding intake. As I mentioned, the city's first call for application for capital funding through the CIP demonstrated that there are projects within the city that with capital funding could provide committed affordable housing rental units in the near term. Importantly, beyond the federal half funding, the city has no revenue source for this valuable program. This approach maximizes the impact of the city's limited surplus and underutilized lands and best aligns with the primary goal of leveraging city-owned sites to facilitate affordable housing. This option also allows the city to meet the general objectives of the HAF initiative, which is to leverage publicly owned land to provide additional affordable rental units in our community. Next slide, please. Staff have worked with CMHC to amend the HAF action plan commitments to reflect this revised approach to our surplus and underutilized lands for affordable housing initiative. The amendment to the scope of this project has been approved by CMHC, and 81 Wildwood is now being marketed for sale on the private market, with the intention of allocating the proceeds from the sale to the existing CIP for affordable housing and sustainable design. In addition, city staff continue to meet with York Region to discuss ongoing potential partnership opportunities as both levels of government seek opportunities to leverage our city and regionally owned lands to achieve affordable housing goals. Finally, we are continuing to refine our process and framework to guide future opportunities. This refinement includes both learnings from other jurisdictions as they undertake similar-minded projects and based on our own lessons learned. As Richmond Hill's settlement area is largely already built out, we know we will need to be innovative in our approach to continuing this program. Next slide, please. In terms of next steps, as noted, the city is undertaking appropriate action to market 81 Wildwood Avenue for sale and will return to council with any firm offers. Staff will also be working to finalize the surplus and underutilized land for affordable housing program in 2026, which will include the previously noted process and framework, and set out direction with respect to ongoing activities to identify potential city-owned properties that may be suitable for affordable housing. And finally, staff will prepare for a future intake to the CIP when sale proceeds from 81 Wildwood are secured, with the goal of facilitating additional long-term affordable rental units in our community. Next slide, please. In mid-2026, staff will complete the HAF commitments related to this initiative. However, this does not necessarily mean our work with respect to this program is complete. When we met in April, I presented to you the Affordable Housing Concierge Pilot Program design, which staff are in process of fully implementing in the coming weeks. This concierge program, among other objectives, seeks to foster partnerships and facilitate collaboration among sector partners in support of achieving the city's affordable housing goals. Should the Affordable Housing Concierge Pilot Program become established permanently, staff may be able to find new opportunities to use city-owned land for affordable housing. As part of this program, the Affordable Housing Coordination Team is working to build relationships with local organizations and sector partners to support new affordable housing projects in Richmond Hill. Now that the city has established an initial inventory of potential surplus and underutilized lands for affordable housing, staff can take a broader look at what housing providers need. This will help ensure that any future opportunities to meet these needs are realized as they arise. Next slide, please. So this concludes my presentation today. Staff recommends that the presentation on the city's affordable housing initiatives be received and comments referred back to staff. Thank you very much for your time. I'm very happy to take comments or questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that presentation. I'll bring it back to committee. Does someone, first of all, like to move receipt of the presentation? Someone on committee? Thank you, Ms. Moknacki. Okay, did you have any questions of the presenter? Oh, can't hear you. You're on mute.
Yes, I do have two questions, okay, Mr. Chair. So through you, I would like to ask Ashley. First of all, I'd like to revisit a question I brought up with the earlier presentation. Could you clarify if these lands where there's which are former pumping stations, does these lands belong to the city of Richmond Hill? Could you clarify that? Like there's one at Indigo and Farmstead, and it's two lots. There's one on Crosby, a beautiful large lot, and they're sitting there vacant, and I don't know who owns them.
Through the chair, I can't be certain, Ms.
We might have to get back to you.
Yeah. I should think
specific locations. You can ask our staff. We'll get back to you with specific locations in the ownership and questions you might have.
Because the reason why I'm asking that is these lands could be possibly made available for affordable housing. I mean, the one at Indigo and Farmstead, you could put a fourplex on there quite easily. I mean, I know there's all sorts of things that you have to look at, but it's quite reasonable to assume that. The second question that I have to ask is, I do know of a church that has quite a large parcel of land, and it's on public transit, it's close to shopping, doctor's offices, etc. Have you thought about approaching this particular church? I mean, I'm not going to say the name of it, but have you thought of that?
So through the chair, thank you for the question. Excellent question. I think should the pilot program that we're currently in process of implementing, should it be established more permanently? Certainly, I think we're aware that faith-based organizations are landholders as well. So it would be of interest to start to engage with some of those parties, absolutely, to understand if there's an ability, a will, a desire to move forward with some sort of partnership opportunity. Like the short answer is yes. That is something that is, I think, in the future of this program, should it continue to be established permanently.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate you raising it. This is something I'm aware of. So yes, hopefully when the time comes, those conversations can proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clare, you had questions also?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, thank you, Ashley, for the presentation. And I'm just wondering, too, that suggestion about faith-based groups, could that be part of the concierge function? I just have one question. I don't know whether it was answered previously or not, but under the CPI, is one of the criteria that you're looking at in terms of a project is how long will the units that are affordable remain affordable? Has some criteria been set like that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the minimum affordability period commitment was 25 years. And then one of the scoring criteria, as the eligible applications went through to competitive scoring, did relate to affordability. So minimum 25 years with the idea that longer affordability periods might factor into the scoring evaluation.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ashley, for the presentation. Commend you on a lot of work that's been done in what feels like probably a very busy summer as well. One question, just I know you referenced earlier that the slide that there was more than 2 vacant sites or 2 sites identified, but you've only gone through 2. So were the rest were eliminated earlier? And I guess following on, what's the kind of review process? Is this all tied to the HAP, or is the intention that even as kind of HAP goals expire, that you'll revisit the lands on a like annual basis, or to see if any of the situations have changed?
Through the chair, thank you very much. I appreciate the question. So I will say, because of our commitments under the HAF agreement and the relatively tight timelines within which we needed to demonstrate achieving those commitments, this what I have presented and where we're at right now, that was one of the key inputs into the decision making and how we've gotten to this point. So with respect to these other sort of potential parcels that may be out there, as a general statement, I would say I think there were some upon review that, you know, the desktop exercise, they tick the boxes, but you look at it and recognize that it's not a viable site for one reason or another. But certainly our final commitment on this initiative through the HAF agreement is to formalize a program, right? And that's kind of the work that remains on this particular project, is to understand this is a point in time analysis. Some of these sites that we identified have potential, but also come laden with various complexities. And so what do we do moving forward? How do we go beyond this point in time and then build this into our practices so that we don't miss an opportunity with one of these limited sites should one be available to us. So I appreciate the question. I think that's kind of the last chunk of work that remains from my perspective, the sort of what's next. You know, we're meeting our commitments under the HAF agreement, which was obviously a key driver to this point. And moving forward, we're going to be figuring out how we're managing this as we move forward. And I think that's part of the reason why I was really happy to have York Region present today, because they've really done some excellent work in setting out a framework and a decision-making matrix that now we can look to and figure out what pieces of that might work for us, and how do we continue to partner with them. And so yes, yeah, that's where we're headed, I think.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Silovitz, you're next.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just unmuting. My thanks to Ashley and to our York Region counterparts for their presentation as well. This has been a very interesting discussion, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I have a number of questions and a number of comments, and I'm gonna address the elephant in the room, and that is time. So we are in a situation where housing affordability is critical and housing availability is critical. So if I may, through you, Mr. Chair, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot. It's just a question. How do we manage that time factor? Because there's time in bringing all of this to fruition. There's time in finding the builder, because we as a municipality or a region, we don't build. That would go out for RFP. And then the time factors that we all know so well on council as to how long it actually takes to get something built. So, like I said, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but when we look at that balance of time that we have to look at, being under such extreme stresses at the moment, how are we even managing that as a municipality? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Chair. I can take a stab at some of a response anyway, because I think exactly as you've identified, that time crunch piece is a key input when we're considering how to administer these programs and how to deliver on the pieces of work that we've committed to delivering. So I would say one of the ways that we've done that is we've identified that as a municipality, it is a long runway if we have a piece of land to getting that land available, out the door, built, which is, I think, where our heads were at when we arrived at this recommendation to, instead of trying to do all the things, leverage our lands in the best way that we can, and then make use of a program that we've established, that we've seen through this first intake, can work with the people who do this business to meet these objectives. So that's sort of all that I can say in terms of timelines and how we're dealing with it now, because we do want to see these units materialize. It does take many years for these types of projects to evolve and come through the processes and actually break ground. So in appreciation of all of that, we've done our best to use what we've got, and then come up with the most efficient and fastest and practical way to make use of that resource.
Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate that. And it's I see Ms. Flores through you, Mr. Chair. Does Maria want to answer?
Director Flores?
Yes.
You want to weigh in there too?
Yes, through the chair. I just wanted to add an additional comment. Ashley did, eloquently address what we are trying to do. And I just wanted to make the point that, as a local municipality, this is a new role for us in addressing affordable housing. It's not something a few years ago that was even part of our mandate, and it still isn't exactly. We don't have a Department of Housing. We've always turned to the region for their guidance and leadership in that. But, as you said, there is a housing crisis. And so we are still trying to get a feel for what our responsibilities and role could be. You're right, we don't build housing, but as we've started to establish some of these new programs, we're really trying to take advantage of where we can make the most impact. The CIP has been received very well in terms of intake. We don't know what the future holds in terms of permanency of that program, because it was based on a half grant, but we see that that's potentially a role that us as a local municipality could take, and then obviously future partnerships with the region and nonprofit as well as the development community. But again, it's still early days for us, but certainly it's something that I think we do need to be part of for sure.
Thank you, Director Flores. I appreciate that. The second part, through you, Mr. Chair, of my comments, questions about the elephant in the room is I've worked with Ms. McNackey and her organization, present and past, to try and find affordable housing for those who are in desperate need, such as those who have mental health problems and are living at home, and they need to be they need to be housed in off-site, off of home. So, and I know the difficulties that we have gone through for so many years about trying to find these spaces. I'm also working with them and one developer in Ward 5 to try and sort something out on that scale as well. But that development is also slightly stalled. So again, it's that domino effect of time versus application versus time and all of that. So I really appreciate what Ms. McNackey and her organization are doing, because this is another side of finding homes for those who truly need them. And with that in mind, the second part, if I may, for the question through you, Mr. Chair, is again the elephant. There's a waiting list for all of these housing units through Housing York. How do we, if we can answer that, or if we have to go back to the region, how is that also balanced? There must be massive waiting lists with Housing York, and yet we have such a stressful problem with housing at the moment, and the time factor. So sorry to be so long-winded here, but how do we deal with that as well? Because if you've got the time factor, the development factor, the application factor, which extends everything out by years, you also have a waiting list that will extend everything out even further. So again, not to put anybody on the spot, but I think that that question also deserves a public answer, if possible. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Ashley.
Through the chair, I'll take a stab here. I thank you, Councillor, and I would hope it goes without saying, I agree, right? I'm passionate about this portfolio of work, and I have a personal professional history in housing, and there's not a singular answer or solution, or I think we'd be doing it. I think, incremental improvement is what we have to be realistic about, kind of aiming for. This is not a problem that materialized overnight. It won't be solved quickly either. So I don't have an answer in terms of, how do we get out of it and how do we solve this? It is the region who manages this centralized wait list in terms of these households that we know are in core housing need. I think we heard through them today that they are very attuned to the fact that they need more facilities, and that this need is growing. And so it's gonna be through a collective effort of all the levels of government trying to move in the same direction, that I think finally arrives us on the path that's sort of out of this. Oh, and Ms. Gergain is still here, so I welcome her to speak on her own behalf. I wasn't sure if York Region staff were sticking around, so I'll stop there and maybe defer to Sabrina, who might be able to comment further.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much for the question, and thanks for your response, Ashley. Just raising my hand to reiterate a lot of the sentiments that you've already alluded to. The waiting list is growing. We recognize that. So here at the region, we try to be proactive in terms of thinking about what is next, because acknowledging that the planning process does take time. So getting shovels in the ground is not step number one. So we are going through a portfolio management plan update, looking at all of our HY land holdings, really determining how we can either leverage those properties to develop next. So once that plan is done, and that's scheduled for later this year, we will be updating our pipeline list of projects, which sets the pathwork of where we will be developing community housing next. I think the implementation of the site selection framework is a big step forward for us. It was a very large initiative that we were able to successfully lift off the ground, and that is really helping us determine the development potential of sites. So that's a little bit about how we are looking to grow the HY portfolio. However, we are taking really big steps in regards to helping nonprofits as well. So acknowledging that we can't do it all, similar to what Ashley was saying, it's really a collaborative effort here. And I think, we have a lot of demonstrated success. Recently in September, we had a report go to the Housing and Homelessness Committee, which is talking about our HARP program, which is a whole initiative on how we can essentially build capacity in the nonprofit sector. We released earlier this year our second round of the community housing supply grant, which is a fund to fund nonprofits. So we are really looking at all avenues and how to build capacity in the sector overall. But agreed, Ashley, with everything you said, that it's really joint initiative from all levels of government and our partners in the nonprofit sector and also the private sector.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Sabrina. I appreciate that. And Ashley, thank you very much. It is, I think, one thing that is made very clear through this committee and through any discussions that we have at further committees of council and at council is that this is a partnership. And this partnership is also very new. And hopefully as we progress further through the process, that partnership becomes more and more defined. But this is such a good conversation to have in the public realm because it does help to explain all the problems that we do have to deal with on a regular basis. And this timeline is very, very concerning. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Silovitz. Now, before we move to the next speaker, I see a bunch of hands have gone up, and we're an hour and 20 minutes in, and approaching where we normally take a bio break. And if no one has objections, I think we'll just stop for 5 minutes for the benefit of all the staff that are on the call and in chambers here and myself. If we could reconvene at 2 to 3, just a 5-minute break. It's required that we do take a break. Any objections to doing that? Okay, so we'll be back here. Don't have to go any